Hello all, it's Jmix here, and I humbly ask all my YouTube subs and viewers to check out Riskie Forever's new book, Art Is My Life, The Streets, Tupac, Death Row Records, and Now. It's a must-read for any Death Row Records fan. It has behind-the-scenes stories and never-before-seen artwork. Get your copy today by going to Amazon.com, your local Barnes & Nobles, or you can check out www.riskieforever.com. That's www.riskieforever.com. So without any further ado, I'm going to jump right on in to my full-length interview with Riskie Forever.
This is a Jmix exclusive.
I gotcha. All right, I'll go ahead and jump into it, man. You have a new book out, From the Streets to the Industry, My Life in Art and Death Row Records. What was your motivation to write this book, and how has the reception been so far?
I've been getting good reception from everybody that's purchased the first run of the book. I just switched publishers, so I started my own publishing company. But so far, I've been getting good reviews. The reason why I decided to put a book out was right now, just trying to cross over, from everything that I was doing back in the day. It's like historical art, and nobody really ever got the opportunity to see who I was or what I had going on. Like I like to tell a lot of artists these days, a lot of people, they have social media to promote who they were. But back then in that day, we didn't have social media. We didn't have like an Instagram or Facebook or Twitter or nothing of that sort. So just me basically getting out here and trying to tell everybody who I was kind of, it was kind of crazy for me to just keep on doing that. So what I wanted to do was I wanted to reintroduce myself, and by reintroducing myself was basically writing this book, showing people all of the artwork that I've done, because plenty of people already know who know the artwork when they see it. They just don't know who the guy is behind it. And then I just wanted to basically bring, my story from Death Row Records to light. And I kind of just wanted to let everybody know, when people hear Death Row, the first thing that they want to do, they want to think negative about the situation. But I kind of wanted to let everybody know it wasn't an all negative experience. There were some good experiences involved in being at Death Row as well. And I wanted to kind of bring that to the light, too.
Now, you've made yourself a celebrity with your artwork. Do you consider yourself to be naturally talented, or was this something that you had to work at?
I mean, if you read my book, you'll see it was something that I had to work at. I was influenced by my aunt. I used to sit on her lap every day and look at her draw, and I wanted to be an artist, to kind of model myself after my aunt, because my aunt was real gifted at it, and I didn't really know how to draw. So I started, tracing out of coloring books and things of that sort. And eventually, like I wrote in my book, I ended up running into a little problem that kind of embarrassed me to the point to where, I wanted to teach myself how to draw. So I was self-taught on everything. And it's just, I don't know. I learned, and I never really even received any schooling or anything other than high school, and then learning different techniques from the streets.
Do you have any advice out there for people that want to go into the art profession? Because you're so acclaimed, do you have any advice that you would give people that are looking to get into that avenue?
The advice I would give is always copyright your stuff. Don't let anybody copyright your stuff for you. Always make sure that you're taken care of financially. Always put your best effort forth. And stay grounded to what you want to do. And don't let anybody take you off of that course. Whatever you have made up in your mind, what you want to do with your talent, go for it. Don't let anybody change your thoughts.
Now, you speak of learning to draw and from your aunt and tracing coloring books and comics and stuff like that. When was the transition? What was the turning point to where you thought that, hey, I could do this for a living?
You know what? It was high school. High school after I learned how to airbrush. Every football game, everybody would come to me and they would want me to airbrush them something to wear to the football games on Friday nights. And that's when I started figuring, yo, I can really make money doing this, and I don't have to, depend on anybody else giving me anything, because it was like my mom and dad, they were giving me lunch money to go to school with, but after a while, I was just telling them like, yo, I didn't need it, because I was getting so many different people that were coming at me, wanting me to do art projects, airbrushing. I mean, to be honest, like in art class, people used to pay me to do their assignments for them. So I knew that this could be like a very good thing for me to grow up and make and take care of myself off of.
Because you were doing some of their art for them, was there ever an experience where you did someone's work for them and then they, got a good grade or won a prize for it?
You know what? I think I did in a high school contest. I had helped so many people, and it was crazy because I came in second place to something that I helped somebody with, and they won first place. So that was kind of ironic to me. It made me not want to do nothing else for nobody else.
Now, in your career, did you have any roadblocks? Did you have anybody ever telling you that you couldn't make it or that your art wasn't any good? Did you have any haters?
No, I never had any haters. Everybody that I ran into, during my career, they always encouraged me to strive forward. You know what I mean? I've never had anybody come to me and say, yo, you're not going to be able to make it. You're not good as this person. You're not that great. I've never had anybody do that. All of my friends, they've always backed me up and always encouraged me to take my art, one step forward than what I was already taking it. So, no, never no haters.
Is it true that you linked up with Death Row while working at the swap meet?
Well, actually, that's true. But in a sense, I was still, actually, my friend Clifford, he had a shop in the swap meet. We were working in the swap meet, but at that time we had just moved into a store, which was right across the street, because he was actually tired of working for the swap meet because he couldn't do things like how he wanted to, and he couldn't stay as late as he wanted, because at the swap meet you only had certain hours you could be there. So what he wanted to do was open up his own store so that way he could stay in as late as he wanted to. So at that time, when I got introduced to Suge and at Death Row Records, I was working with him at his store. So that was right across the street from the Compton swap meet. But all of my life, airbrushing, just starting off like commercially, I was in the Compton swap meet.
Can you tell the fans out there about the day that you met Suge Knight and Tupac, and were you a prior fan of his?
Yeah, I've been always a fan of Tupac's. I mean, from the Juice days. I mean, and I kept a real close eye on him when he went to prison for the first time. I mean, Me Against the World was one of my favorite albums. So it was very real. It was just super real for me to be able to meet him, which Suge introduced me to Tupac the day that they were shooting the California Love version, at the California Love video version at the Compton swap meet. I happened to meet Suge that day. He introduced me to Pac. Pac wanted me to work on something for America's Most Wanted, but that didn't happen. I ended up doing the insert, working with Hen Dogg, before he passed, working on the insert for the All Eyes on Me album. So that's what kicked off my career. We're working for Death Row.
Had you met Suge prior to this? Had you seen him around the neighborhood?
Yeah, I saw him around the neighborhood on a few different occasions, but he had never got the opportunity to see my work. He only knew that I knew how to paint, but he had never saw any of my artwork. Because at that time I was rapping, so when I introduced myself to Suge, I introduced myself as a rapper. I didn't even introduce myself as an artist. But my cousin Gina, she ended up showing Suge some of my artwork, and at that time he really wanted to sit down with me and meet me. But at that time when I went to meet him, he was having another meeting with MC Hammer and Tupac, so I wasn't able to sit down and talk with him that day. But he was able to see my work.
You brought up that you said that Pac wanted you to work on Two of America's Most Wanted, some art for it. Did you ever get it? Did you draft anything for that?
No, actually I didn't. He had just talked to me about it, so I wasn't sure. I was just waiting on a phone call to see what I was going to do. He looked at my portfolio. He liked my work, so that's what he said he wanted me to work on. That was going to be the first project, but it didn't happen that way. When I got the phone call to actually work on something, it was for the insert of the album. So I really didn't complain. You know, I just knew that I had a big opportunity ahead of me.
Now, the insert of that album is a pretty famous insert. What was your inspiration for that? Was that what you saw at the video shoot, or was it just something that came off the top of your head?
Actually, I worked with Hen Dogg on that project. Hen Dogg brought a couple of sketches through of an idea he had. I looked at the sketches. I started putting together, you know, a drawing off of his sketches, and I started painting. We were working on that project for maybe about 3 days. I talk about all of this in my book. We worked on a project for about 3 days. We finally got it done. When we got it done, he took me to the death row offices to present it. And at that time, I wasn't even hired. I was just being hired. I was just working as a freelance artist.
What was Pac's reaction? Did you get to show it to Pac?
You know what? I didn't get to show it directly to Pac. What I did was I walked it into Death Row Interscope. At that time, we shared the same building at 10900 Murdoch Plaza in Westwood. So when I walked it in, we walked it in over to Angel. I forgot Angel's last name, but she was actually the marketing person over Interscope. So we walked over to her and presented it to her, and she took it from there. But maybe because I turned that in, I believe it was December. It was December of '95 when I did the All Eyes on Me insert. We turned it in to Angel, and after that, I didn't see Tupac until actually I got hired in February. And once I saw him, and he found out that was me that had painted it, and he saw me, he just started giving me major props then.
I don't want to give too much away because I do want people to buy your book, but
yeah, that's why I'm trying to be so how I am about it, because I want to leave something for, you know, something interesting for them to read, because basically all the questions you're asking me are in there.
No doubt. From the time of the swap meeting Suge, what was the process that landed you basically in the art department at Death Row? Were there subsequent meetings? I want to preface this. I've heard people say that Suge Knight had a weird way of hiring people, and I was just curious. Some people have just said that he would call them in the office when they already had the job and then announce it to everybody without telling them. So I guess my original question, was there a process that landed you actually working for them? Were there subsequent meetings?
You know what? Actually, it was kind of a process, because once I met them the first time, it didn't go so easy for my first meeting when he introduced me to Tupac. I ended up being reintroduced to Suge by a lot of people that I knew from the neighborhood that kept bringing me back up to him, which made him actually take a look at me deeper, because it wasn't like he was hiring an outsider, somebody that he didn't know. So by everybody talking to me, and it was people that I knew that he knew, I guess he felt comfortable enough to hire me. So he gave me a job. The first day of work, I showed up for the first day of work. I had a meeting scheduled with him. He didn't show up for late. Next thing I know, MC Hammer was coming up asking, well, who was Riskie? Where am I at? And then when I told him who I was, he told me Suge would be up in a couple of minutes to meet him. I met with Suge from there. He told me I was going to make a lot of money. Next thing I know, I was being hired on Death Row Records, and I was given a fat check for working on the album.
Some people have said that they were either not paid properly or mistreated while at Death Row. Were you treated well working at the label?
I feel like I was treated well. I was given a lot of bonuses. I never wanted for anything. If I wanted something, all I had to do was put in a payment slip. I could put a payment slip in, actually a petty cash slip. I could put in a petty cash slip, tell them what I needed, and I was basically getting that like clockwork. I never had any problems like getting any funds or having a problem getting my check from Death Row. Never that.
Now, you've said before in previous interviews, and I've seen some of your artwork, that you're a fan of the Notorious B.I.G.
Yeah, I was always a fan, even before I got on the Death Row Records. But when I got on the Death Row Records, that wasn't a conversation piece of mine.
So that's something you just kept to yourself? You didn't catch any flack for that?
I mean, I didn't catch any flack for that, but I mean, I'm not going to go to work bumping Biggie in the office. That I wasn't going to do.
Fair enough. Did you create any art for projects or albums that were scrapped or did not pan out?
I did projects for Rage's album, Necessary Roughness, that didn't come out. I did 2 Gangsta for Radio artwork that didn't come out. I did a lot of stuff for Hen Dogg that didn't have the opportunity. So that's just to name a few albums. But, I mean, I've done all types of artwork around Death Row Records.
And I'm assuming that you go on that topic at length in your book?
I'm sorry, repeat that for me?
I'm assuming that you go in length on that topic in your book.
Yeah, actually, my book is filled with unreleased artwork, stories, talking about the artwork. I mean, my book isn't just a book. It's actually a piece of art. You know what I mean? It has, every page is artistic. It took a while for me to design this book and put this book together actually how I wanted it to be. And it goes from, it's like a timeline to everything that I went through at Death Row. I mean, from the first start of me walking in, the first day of me being employed there, through all of my projects, every album cover that I've done there. So it's not just your average book. I mean, if anybody wants to collect Death Row memorabilia, I mean, my book is definitely that. And I'm not trying to, like, toot my own horn, but, I mean, it's definitely that. It has everything in there. I tell you, everything in that book is from my perspective as an artist at Death Row, working there every day. So it is what it is.
No doubt. You had brought up Hen Dogg. Not a lot is known about him. Could you tell the fans out there about your friendship and your partnership at Death Row and what he was like as a person?
I mean, Hen Dogg was one of the coolest people you would ever know. I mean, he used to pick me up for work every single day. I mean, he would drive from his house in Bellflower all the way to my house to pick me up, and we would drive all the way to West L.A. I mean, Sibo was one of his favorite artists, so we would be listening to Sibo like almost every day. I mean, that time with him, I mean, that was just a really cool experience. I mean, because he basically opened the door for me and pushed me through. He never was like, you know, even though he was an artist too, he never tried to hold me back or confine me to anything because he was afraid I was going to take the spotlight from him. He always pushed me through and encouraged me also to go ahead and do what I do because he knew that there were things art-wise that he couldn't do that I could get done. And he never, like I said, he never tried to hold me back. He always pushed me. So, I mean, to this day, I mean, I miss Hen Dogg. I mean, our birthdays are on the exact same day, which is August the 16th. I mean, we spent almost every day together. I remember sometimes when we moved to 8200 Wilshire Boulevard, we would catch the elevator all the way to the top of the penthouse, and we would be out on the roof next to the billboard just smoking blunts, just looking at traffic, just looking at the world. I mean, I just experienced so much with him, and I just hate that, you know, he's not here today.
I know that you currently have a friendly relationship of fellow artist Joe Cool, since we're on the topic of artists at Death Row. Was there any friction between you two at the time that you came to Death Row? Any competition, or was he even around at that time? For those that don't know, that Joe Cool is the artist that did Snoop Dogg's Doggy Style cover.
I mean, Joe Cool he was around, but then he wasn't around. He wasn't the type of artist like Hen Dogg and I were, where we reported to work every day and we were in the office every day. That just wasn't Joe Cool's style. You know what I mean? Joe Cool worked directly with Snoop, which is his cousin. He did a lot of work with the Dog Pound, and I mean, he was a part of their posse, so it wasn't for him to be there every day. He was busy with his cousin, and he did other things besides artwork with Snoop. So he was never there. I mean, there was a little friction when we worked on the Dollfather album, you know, with me doing some of the artwork, and you know, it was kind of a mixed up story. He felt like I was trying to take credit for it, which I wasn't, because I was giving him his credit, but it just didn't pan out that way. It was basically he got paid. Well, no, he didn't get paid. I got paid for it, and he didn't get paid for it, and that's where the confusion had came in at. But I mean, since then, me and Joe Cool have talked about that. That's long in the past. I mean, he calls us the partners in crime, and I mean, that's my boy. I call him whenever I need to talk about anything. I always call Joe Cool. We just have a real serious friendship. You know what I mean? Because we feel like not just I feel like there is not another artist, and Hen Dogg is not here, that I can go sit down with that has the same accomplishments as me, like historic platinum album covers like that. We're the only two. So I look up to him. He looks up to me. You know, we motivate each other. So I mean, that's my friend for life. Like I can't describe it any other way than that.
Now, Death Row Records itself, it gets a bad rap. Is Suge Knight the big bad wolf that people make him out to be?
I mean, speaking on my perspective, I mean, he was a good guy to me. I can't speak on how he treated everybody else or comment on everybody else's stories of him. You know, mine, I don't have any bad stories to talk about Suge during the Death Row days. I mean, he always made sure I was straight. Whenever he visited the office, he always came and checked on me firsthand. I've never been threatened. I've never been hit. I've never been told to do this. I've never been told to do that. It was always, however he told me to come up with the project, however I came up with it, he was fine with that. I just never had a problem with that. He was one of the coolest people up there to me. Like I didn't have no worries.
Now, because the record label was so notorious, you know, a lot of people have come out and written books and told stories, and there's been many documentaries. As someone that was on the inside, have you ever heard a story about Death Row where you thought that's bullshit?
I mean, like I said, I can't really speak, you know, from everybody's own memories of Death Row or what they went through, and it's a lot of stuff that I didn't get to see on my own. So I can't really say like, you know, their story was bullshit. You know, I can't really say that because everybody has their own stories. But you know, just looking at a few movies. More than just recently, the Michelet movie, just looking at that, I can't speak on what she went through with Trey. But the Death Row situation, like so far as, like, I don't know. Like I said, I can't really say, but when I looked at it, I was kind of mesmerized because I remember her being there, being in charge at some point before I left, and it didn't seem, you know, like she was really having that type of struggle with everything.
Well, to be fair to you, I mean, there is scenes where Suge Knight is watching about the shooting on television when he's sitting next to her. So, you know, a lot of people have found some inconsistencies in that story.
Yeah, but like I said, I can't really speak too much for her story because I wasn't there for every page of that. I only got to see her when she came to the office. I got to see certain things that she did. And actually, I was at one visit to the jail between her and Suge. And just at that visit to the jail, she didn't seem unhappy to me. I know that there was times where she would do things around the office that people liked, but I know that some people didn't like her. You know, they wasn't feeling her coming through trying to be the boss. So, I mean, so far as like the movie, I can't really say like, oh, this is bullshit or not because I really don't know how exactly everything played out with her behind the scenes or doing things that I was around. I would be a hypocrite to say, yeah, that's bullshit, and I don't know the full story. But just to say some of the instances that I feel like I saw, I do feel like they kind of they played out different in the movie than they played out in real life.
Fair enough. Most notably, you are known for the infamous cover of Makaveli. Was there already a concept in place, or did you have free reign to create your own design?
I didn't come up with the concept for that idea. Tupac came up with the concept for that idea, and I just visually put it together. Everything that took place on the Makaveli album was all Tupac's idea. So I just followed that. Did
he ever say, you know, what what the meaning behind being on the cross was, or did you not ask?
I mean, he explained that to me, but it was so long ago that I can't really rephrase it word from word on how he told me what everything meant. But I know that he said he felt like he had been crucified by certain cities and certain places and certain things, so he wanted to make that all come out visually in that album cover.
I do have to ask, and forgive me if you don't know, but was that to be an official release? Do you know if that was supposed to be a release, like a studio album, or a lot of people have said that it was like a mixtape / swap meet release? Do you know anything about that?
I wrote about it in my book. It was not intended to be a commercial release. No.
And I'll go ahead and I absolutely will direct everybody to go get this book. There's been internet pictures of an unreleased back cover that depicts Dre and Puffy and the Notorious B.I.G. in a certain way. Is that real?
Yeah, it's definitely real. And I would have never talked about that. You know, that was hidden for almost, let me see, that happened in 96. I believe that happened in 90. Yeah, it definitely did happen in 96. And it didn't come out till maybe about 2009 where people actually got the chance to see that. And that was due to the auctions that were taking place where people were auctioning off material from Death Row Records, and it was actually found out. And people started talking about it. And once the people started talking about it, I guess they realized that my signature was on it. So they started asking me questions about it. And it's like I couldn't deny nothing that was actually there. It was true. So I started talking about it. Other than that, for years, I've always kept that picture under wraps. I've never spoken of it. I've never really even showed anybody that picture. But that picture is also part of my book, not for the disrespect, but for the history.
Whose idea was it?
That was all Pac's idea.
As a fan of the Notorious B.I.G., did you have any apprehension making it?
I mean, I did, but I just couldn't be like, yo, I'm a Biggie fan. Like, no, I can't do this. Like, I had to do what I was supposed to do, so that's what I did.
Now, I'd heard a story that you were blessed enough to see Pac rap some of his Makaveli era songs during an interview before they were out. Can you tell us a little bit about that situation and your reaction?
You know what? I used to be around George Price a lot. George Price would take me to the studio with him a lot. You know, a lot of times I would be at Death Row. My work would be done. I'd have projects that were already ready, you know, months ahead of time. So he would take me with him because a lot of artists used to pick on him. So he used to take me with him because he felt like if I was with him, they'd kind of like leave him alone. So he had took me to an interview that he had set up for Snoop for the Dogfather album. And we went, it was actually for BRE magazine. So we went over to Can-Am and he was conducting the interview with Snoop, and Pac came in. And when Pac came in, he started talking about the new Makaveli album. So at that time he started talking about it. He started playing a couple of cuts from that album, and he started, you know, reciting the raps and performing like right there in front of us. A lot of the songs that I heard, they end up not being on the album, so it kind of made me wonder, like, what happened to that song? Because a lot of stuff that he was spitting, I mean, it was, you know, Tupac was incredible, you know, with his word and his lyrics, his albums, his music, everything was dope. So it always made me wonder what happened to those songs. So, and that's what comes with the fact that it was supposed to be an underground album and not a commercial release.
Now, tragically, the last time you spoke to Pac was on September 6th. How did that day start out for you, and can you share the memories of that conversation?
I mean, the day started out cool. I was in the office. I had just gotten, you know, the proofs back from the Makaveli album artwork, which is the front and the back cover. I got a call from Roy Tespot. Roy, you know, he was Suge's personal assistant. He worked in the front office. He told me to take the album art down to Tupac, which Tupac had, and he had a penthouse off of Wilshire Boulevard in a place called the Wilshire House. So Roy sent me down there to take him the artwork so he can approve of it. My friend Janella, she worked in the back office with me. She used to dance with MC Hammer, a year prior. She was still doing things with Hammer, but me and her became good friends because we used to share a space. So she drove me down to meet up with Pac. So when I took everything to him, I showed Pac. He approved of the album cover. He liked the artwork. And at that time, he wanted me to start painting pictures for his home because Death Row was about to give me an art show. I was about to be the first visual artist off the label, and they were setting up to give me an art show. Pac was going to host it. So he was telling me that day, like, yo, I'm going to host this art show for you. Once you get everything, we get everything together when we get back from Vegas. Like, he told me that, the walls were naked in his pad. He needed something on them, so start painting pictures, and he was going to start putting them around. He was basically like giving me the go-ahead, telling me he was basically going to endorse me. But, that next day he ended up getting shot, and, things didn't happen the way, that they were meant to happen.
I do have to ask, was he in good spirits? Because there's a flip side of the coin. Some people say he was unhappy. Some people say that he was completely happy. In your experience, and I know you can't judge the man's feelings, but outwardly, was he in good spirits that day?
I mean, that day he was in good spirits. He was excited, especially when I gave him the album artwork. He was really excited, and he was really pumped up for me to, do stuff around his house. A lot of people will probably think, oh, it's just his story. It's just something he want to say to make himself. But no, he was really pumped up that day. He was telling me, like, yo, you gotta, start doing this, start doing that. Like, he was in real good spirits that day. Like, it was enough to have me excited. So can't wait to get back from Vegas to get started.
How did you hear that he had been shot?
It was crazy. I worked in 662 that night, and the rumor mill had been floating around, that everything happened, that a shooting had happened. But I mean, we didn't see anything. And I mean, everybody was speculating because they were late. But to me, that was like, yo, he was late. I mean, they was late to everything. So that really didn't make me feel like, something had really happened. So it wasn't until the club was over and they had never showed up that it sparked question in my mind. But it wasn't until I got back to my hotel room and jumped in the bed and turned the TV on, and it was on every news channel when it happened. So that's when I actually found out what really happened, when I made it back to my hotel room and got to the news.
A lot of people said they thought he was going to pull through. Did you have high hopes for that?
Yeah, I definitely thought he was going to pull through. I definitely thought that. I'm like, yo, he had been shot already five times before he made it. Everybody was praying. The whole office was praying. Everybody just knew he was going to make it. I mean, for him to pass, that touched a lot of us. Like, that hurt a lot of us when he passed.
This question wasn't in there, but it's a softball. What was the atmosphere like after he passed at death row, and at what point did you decide it was time to move away and pursue other avenues?
I mean, that day it was somber. Like, I mean, when we got the word, a couple of people were crying. The office was real quiet. That same day was a payday. Like, usually you have so many people waiting on their checks so they can go cash their checks or do whatever they wanted to. But that day seemed like it just didn't matter. Like, it was just a real, very feeling. Like, as loud as the office used to be during any other time, like, you could just hear, like, man, it's hard to describe, man. You could fucking hear, like, a pin drop on the floor, like, all through the whole entire office. It was like, it was sad. It was real sad. I believe the next question you asked me is, when did I decide to leave? Like, I didn't really just decide to just leave death row. I was a death row inmate from my mind. I was going to be a death row inmate until I got released from death row. I was going to stick around. I was loyal to that cause. You know what I mean? And it wasn't until there was a situation where Nate Dogg, where I was released, and I just left. I ended up leaving, and I didn't look back. And at that time, Suge was in jail, so I didn't look back. I just kept going with the situation. I just didn't stop.
Have you ever gotten any negative reactions because you did artwork at Death Row Records?
I mean, there were a few people, like, after I left Death Row, I was searching for industry jobs. I mean, when I was working at Death Row, I had everybody hitting me up like, yo, can you do this album cover for this person? Can you work with that? Can you do this? And once I left Death Row, nobody wanted to give me a gig. It was like I was blackballed. Everybody was afraid to hire me because they didn't know if Suge was going to be mad that I was working with them. Nobody wanted to give me a gig so far, so much to where I left the industry as a whole. In 1998, I left it as a whole. Like, I wasn't even working for industry no more. I started being an administrative assistant for Executive Suite. I couldn't land another gig in the industry.
Do you remember the first time that someone recognized you for your work that you didn't know, that came up to you and said, "Hey, you're the guy that did the Makaveli cover"? Do you remember?
No, because it was never a thing like that. It goes back to the beginning of the interview. I mean, a lot of people, like, if people were around Death Row, they knew who I was. But if it was on the outside of Death Row, people didn't know who I was. I might be standing right next to you, and you would never have a clue till I did the Makaveli album cover. So I never had anybody step up to me and be like, yo, you're the one that did that Makaveli cover. It was only that when people came around me, like people, once I left Death Row, when people, I really didn't push that on people. When I met people, I really kind of kept that to myself. You know, I didn't want people to judge me for that. But it wasn't until somebody got close enough or deep enough into my world that where they started really seeing who I was, that really shocked them. Like, yo, you really did some legendary stuff. Like, what are you doing working here? Why are you here? Why? What? Like, wow. Why? What are you doing? It wasn't until those times, you know what I mean, that it really made me feel as if, yo, I needed to get back out there and do something art-wise. Because, I mean, after losing Pac and the whole Nate Dogg situation, I had felt like art had basically got up and abandoned me for a minute. I just didn't have that feeling no more.
May I ask what the situation was with Nate Dogg?
I mean, it was basically he was leaving. I did some artwork for him. He took it to another label. I talked about this in my book also. He left, and I ended up getting the raw end of the deal.
Speaking of your book, where can we order the book, and is it a limited release?
No, it's not a limited release. I'm selling as many books as the people want. I mean, the book right now is on Amazon. It should be available if you want to walk in Barnes & Nobles and order it. I mean, I sell it directly from my website, and it's on sale directly at Amazon also. I mean, it's available at riskieforever.com. And, you know, you spell my name RiskieForever.com. I mean, it's available right there. But it's available. I'm not, like I said, it's not limited. It's just, I'm just trying to move as many units as I can. I'm trying to get as many people to know my story as possible. And like I said, it's not a story to really talk about all of the bad things that happen. I mean, this is a story, even though I do still have I do have all of my own personal stories, you know, revolving around everything that went through. But it's just not just about all of the bad stuff that happened. It's about some good things that went down as well in the book. I mean, it's just my story, just from my perspective, revolving around everything, from every album release and from Tupac's death on now to the future.
For the diehard fans out there, are you offering autographed copies for sale?
I mean, I'm doing that also. If somebody orders it directly from my site, I mean, I'll sign it up and I'll send it directly to them. Because right now, what I have right now, I started with the first edition, it wasn't moving the way I wanted it to move with the publishing company that I was working with. So what I did was I shut that down, and then I went back to the lab and I created a deluxe edition. So the deluxe edition, it's actually up for sale right now on Amazon, but I'll have physical copies in my hands maybe this week. It's a whole entirely different cover. It's new pages added to it. A lot of from the first book, I didn't get to add as much stuff as I wanted to add. But once I left the first publishing house, I said I couldn't just put out the same thing and let them have credit. I wanted it to be entirely different. So I changed the cover up a little bit and I added extra pages to it. So, I mean, like I said, everybody that's read the first book, the first edition, I haven't gotten any bad responses. I get people all the time hitting me up, telling me how it's a great book. They couldn't hardly put it down. I'm just excited for that, and I just want to like I said, I want to let as many people know my story as possible, and I want it to be a motivational thing too, because there's a lot of artists out here. Namely me growing up in Compton, we feel like, we have to be stuck, where we're at. And it's like we don't really feel like we can evolve from the city that we come from to be able to be one of these top-notch artists. And what I'm doing is letting everybody know that it's possible. From somebody that was out here selling drugs on the streets every day to be able to draw a record cover for a major artist that sold over 10 million copies. I mean, it's all possible. And I'm letting everybody know by reading my story that this is possible. You just have to be smart about the things that you're doing while you're doing it.
That's perfect. You want to end it there?
I mean, you can. It's dope. I just feel like it's something, you don't want to ask. I mean, I'm cool with it.
I think we got it. I think it's just enough for people, like, especially with.
This is a Jmix exclusive.
What up, shut up?